Today I want to show you all of my variegated plants. I don't have too many of them. You know what, actually I had no idea I had that many variegated plants, because usually I'm a dark green velvet kind of guy, but sometimes variegation can look really nice. And today I just want to show you every single variegated plant in my collection. Hey everybody, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. As mentioned in the intro, I just want to show you all of my variegated plants. So I'm going to try and keep the information to a minimum. It's really just about showing you some good looking plants so that you can decide whether or not you might want to add that plant to your collection as well. I know that there's different ways of variegation. I know that different variegation works in different ways. I know that most of them would be a mutation, where some of them might be light induced and so on. To be honest, all of the science behind it and all of the information behind it is not something I'm super interested in, and I think the whole craze about variegation being so expensive and rare and desirable and unique and all of that is a bit of a turn off for me as well. Like, I don't like to grow variegated plants for the sake of them being rare or special or super expensive. I only grow variegated plants when I actually think the variegation adds to the aesthetic of that plant, when it just bloody looks good. That's exactly what I want to do today. I just want to show you what they look like so we can appreciate their beauty. We do not need to look beyond the surface today. I just want to take it one room at a time today. So we're just walking through my house and we are finding all of the variegated plants. I don't think I have that many, but well, let's see if Jan at the end of the video still agrees with that, because sometimes I forget about the plants that I have. I'm looking at one right now, so let's start with that. They are also in absolutely no particular order. I'll just show them to you as I come across them. This one is Alocasia gagaena. Kind of cute. She lives out in the greenhouse during summer, and now in winter I have moved her inside. What is really beautiful about her is that she has yellow variegation. I'm not always the biggest fan of yellow variegation. I think I might have 2 or 3 yellow variegated plants, but I think this one is one of the nicer ones. And what is really nice about this plant is that when a leaf first comes out, and I don't have one just unfurling now, this one was the latest one. You can see a bit smaller because of winter, right? But when they first come out, the whole leaf basically just looks fully green, and then the yellow parts turn slightly lime green, and then over time they turn yellow. I think maybe this is like one of the nicest variegated leaves over here. So it's kind of a bit of a thrill, because you never know how variegated the leaf ends up until kind of the very end, right? So I like you guys know I'm all about the journey. It's not just about the end result. So I like that sort of growing journey with this plant. And she has pupped out a bunch of times over here. I have 4 little pups, and then obviously the mother plant. She's in aeroid mix and would probably love a bit of water. One of the only allocations I still got in aeroid mix, but she is liking it. I have no desire to change anything about that until spring. In spring she's going to get a repot, and then I'm going to separate out some of the pups as well and probably give some to Tim. It would look stunning in his garden. And why don't we also just start accumulating them all in the back? I don't know, maybe I'll regret that in a sec. Oh. Sorry, looking at it, actually there's 3 variegated plants in a row just right there. So they're all in a north-facing window. Oh my god, this also needs water. I know what I'm going to do after this video. This is my 4th attempt, I'm pretty sure, at growing a variegated Monstera adansonii. And well, obviously the first 3 didn't do too well because they are no longer with me. With this plant, I always had the issue of it going fully white. This is the first time attempting one that is not going fully white. And when I talked about this in a previous video, so many people were saying that this would be light induced, but I don't think light is inducing the variegation over here. I think this is really a random mutation. You can really see based on the stem, this side of the stem is quite green, right? Hence this side of the plant is quite green. This side of the stem is quite white. So any leaf on this side of the plant has much more variegation. Right? It is now changing with the latest leaf a little bit. There's a thick, see this variegation in the stem here. It's really coming through, and then this leaf has much more variegation to offer again. Now, with variegation in general, no matter how it's induced, how it shows, whatever it might be, the problem with variegation is that the white parts don't have chlorophyll. Chlorophyll is how a plant produces energy, meaning that the white parts can't contribute to energy, but they will require energy to upkeep. So variegation is naturally stunting a plant, which also often then means that a plant can be a little bit deformed when variegated and so on. Not every variegation is healthy, or not every plant looks really healthy when variegated. And I think that is my main concern with variegated plants. Sometimes they just don't look healthy. This plant, or like a cutting of this plant, like 4 years ago in Australia, would set you back $4,000. I got mine for $80, so luckily I waited. But I don't know why you would buy a $4,000 plant that looks a little bit deformed, that could potentially still revert as well. Reverting is when it goes back to being fully green. I don't know if it's still called reverting when it goes back to fully white, but I would assume. Anyway, reverting is usually when the variegation goes away and the plant just goes fully green. Now, what you can do is you can chop between the stems, and then with every reshoot, you're increasing the chances of the variegation coming back. With the alocasia that I showed you earlier, it is kind of just random from my experience, right? How much variegation shows, because they come from from the rhizome, right? So you might have a few leaves that don't show much variegation and a super variegated leaf again and so on. It seems to be more random, whereas with a plant like this, I can usually judge how much variegation there'll be based on the variegation that is shown in the stem. So we are getting into the territory where I see a lot of white, right? So I wouldn't be shocked if subsequent leaves start going very, very white, which is not what I want. I've had such a good run with this plant. I don't mind that it is mainly green. It is probably what's kept this one alive over the last 3 attempts. Everything is so dry. It's because it's cold outside. Listen to this. Yeah. It's so cold outside, I've got the heating on pretty much non-stop, so that obviously dries things out a little bit, despite it being 77% humidity. Well, it does rain every day in Sydney as well, so anyway. This one is my Philodendron Jose Bueno. Now, it has seen better days. It has not had the best growing season. I think next growing season, I definitely want to put this in my greenhouse because I think it will have a good time. But at the same time, I'm not mad at it because it's a plant that I do very little for and it doesn't outgrow its space really quickly. It's kind of just like, you know, I have a long-term vision for that, and maybe this plant is just going to thrive like in 2 years' time or something like that. You know, in the meantime, I have plenty of other plants to enjoy. But it has this sort of speckled variegation over here, but it can also be a little bit more sectoral. Let me show you. Now these leaves, the variegation really fades over time. You can see on these older leaves the variegation isn't so visible anymore, right? On new leaves the variegation can be almost white still. Not the best example. I think also if you give it a lot of light, the variegation will appear a little bit brighter, but it will still fade over time. So from far away, you can't even really tell that this plant is variegated, but I also know I'm not giving it the right conditions. I'm probably not giving it enough light, not enough humidity, all of that. But look, it's growing, it's growing. It doesn't take up so much space, so it's a perfect plant for my living room over here. I have to say, I feel like most of my variegated plants are actually in this room, which is not a bad thing considering that's where we're filming. Alrighty, let me take this beast out. Lean this forward so you can really see it. This is my Mandula pothos, and I've just recently done a full video on her, so if you want to learn more, just check out, I think maybe last week or 2 weeks ago I would have uploaded a video about her. Same plant. This is actually the bottom part of this pole. It reshot. Well, this one I'm growing to maturity and it's almost reached the top of its moss pole, so I really need to chop it to also get these beautiful large leaves back down on eye height so I can see them a little bit better. Again, I don't want to talk too much about her. We've spoken plenty about her recently. Oh, where do I park her? She's going to be in the way. Do not fall. She's also very, very dry. Should I maybe turn the heater off? That's blasting at her. I think as I move around and carry the plants, I'll get warm anyway. This one, as I mentioned, is the bottom part. I chopped it into a bunch of bits, so I have a few cuttings on here, and I'm just trailing it up and down the moss pole to create a lush display rather than creating a mature specimen. And I do think that Mandula pothos has the best variegation in the game. I'm not going to move the big plant again, sorry, I just parked it there. I'll just put a photo in on screen. I think these shades of green and variegated and all of that, like, it is just so stunning. And it's actually super, super white. And I think I just got lucky with that, right? Like, I've seen mandulas that are a little bit more green. Some shoots over here are a little bit more green. But overall, I feel like my mandula is quite white. Which sometimes, like, baffles me, right? Because I'm like, how is this plant alive? Like, how do you produce energy if everything is white? But we also got to keep in mind that leaves have layers, and that's how we also get these different shades of variegation, right? So not every layer might be fully variegated. So you might have the top layer being variegated, but then a green bottom layer or something like that, it presents as like minty to us, and so on, right? So they asked, even though it might appear really white, it doesn't mean that there might not be some chlorophyll in that leaf whatsoever. But yeah, sometimes it's still a little bit odd to me sometimes to see these leaves and be like, how are you doing, girl? Why are you alive? How are you alive? Meanwhile, we're struggling over here. This is fast becoming one of my favorite plants ever. This is Philodendron Florida Beauty, and what a beauty she is. She came into my collection as the smallest little tissue culture plant, and I love her. She's right under the heater, so my main concern is that she gets a little bit too much hot air, but it's okay. My second biggest concern is that she likes to grow off the moss pole a little bit, so I cable tie her back. And yeah, we're due for an extension soon. She's actually been growing super, super fast. Look at that. This leaf has just hardened off, and she's already pushing out the newest leaf over here. Ever since I put her under my Soltec grow light over there. I know it looks really, really bright on camera, but it actually looks really nice in real life. Now, what I love about this plant is obviously the variegation. It is hard to find a variegated plant, a yellow variegated plant that looks nice. I think this one is absolutely stunning. I love the shape of the leaf. I love the red petioles so much. Look at the red petioles and then these red veins as well. I think in contrast with the yellow and green, how stunning is that? And I love the variety in variegation. Apparently this plant is really hard to propagate, by the way, so good that I've got it on a moss pole. But I love how, look, this leaf is fully variegated. This leaf is a lot variegated. This leaf has hardly any variegation. This leaf is almost half-half. This one is really splotchy. This one is almost half-half as well, right? So I love the variety in variegation. Every leaf is a little bit different. Oh my God, look at this. It is so sexy. And I love this. Look at this leaf over here. Look at the petiole over here. You see it's red, but you really see how there's variegation on the left, green on the right. Well, that green didn't make it into the leaf, but over here again as well. Like, you can really see a very distinct border on that petiole. I don't know, you can probably see nothing. On that petiole you can see really distinct border between the green and the white. With time the petioles will fade. Like, look at this petiole over here, it's basically green and white, whereas the brand new petioles are still really red. I don't know, I just think there's so much interest in this plant. The shape, the variegation, the petioles, every aspect of this plant is beautiful, and it grows somewhat slow, or it climbs somewhat slow. I put this on a moss pole almost 2 years ago, I think, and well, it has never outgrown this pole so far. There's been no chop and extents and so on. So it is a really cool plant that doesn't, while it takes up a bit of horizontal space, it doesn't require much effort from a chop and extend perspective and so on. And it's only single planted, yet creates a really lush display. So this could be one of my favorites of all time. I don't think I'm going to choose a favorite today, but I think this one is stunning. Now let's talk about its cousin. Come on, cuz, what's up? This is Philodendron Florida Ghost. with a little hitchhiking oxalis in there. How cute is this? Anyway, when I saw it, I was like, I'm gonna keep it. I think this is gorgeous. Now, because the light is coming from above, these leaves all face up a little bit, so I think this way you actually get a much nicer view of the plant. Now, this variegation is definitely different to the other variegation that I showed you before. With this plant, the variegation is light induced. So the brighter the light, and I think maybe something with temperatures as well, the brighter the light, the more white this plant is going to get. If you give it insufficient light, insufficient conditions in general, it will just be green. So you can see a lot of these leaves over here that I've had recently weren't really white enough for my liking. They're at the very best like a little speckled minty color. But since I put it under my new Soltec light over there, and I've got a full review on it and it's in the description, look at this leaf. I mean, it hasn't unfurled yet, but you can see that it is significantly whiter than previous leaves over here. So I reckon this will be really nice and white, and then over time, over the next year, so it will slowly fade to green. So I go through all of these minty stages and so on. Again, I think it's just really interesting to watch, but it's not as interesting as the Florida Beauty, right? With the Florida Beauty, you get all of the patterns of the variegation. Over here, it's really just how white is the leaf going to be. If you give it a lot of light and warmth, I think mainly light, it's going to be fully white. If you give it not enough light, it's going to be fully green, and then obviously a spectrum in between. So still interesting. I love the leaf shape and so on, but I think the beauty is much nicer. Over here I'm also experimenting with an aeroid mix pole, and I'm having a much harder time keeping this watered compared to the moss pole. But I don't think that the Floridas really mind drying out a teeny tiny bit if you're a bit slack. Of course, it also has the beautiful red petioles over here and red colorfill, so it's a really, really stunning pop of color with these really nice light colored leaves, especially if they get really white. So yeah, let's see how this next leaf looks like. I'm excited. Does silver count as variegation? I mean, technically the El Salvador has some silver splotches at the front. I don't know. I haven't read the definition of that. But let's not take the El Salvador, it's too big. But we can quickly talk about this one. Disclaimer, I'm not too sure if you consider this variegation. I think maybe by definition, technically yes. But I think when we talk about variegation, this is not the type of variegation that we're talking about. I think we're really talking about like that sort of mutation, right? Rather than this one is by design. But then, anyway, I said I'm not going to get too technical. I'm just going to show you sexy plants, and this one is sexy, so I want to show it to you. This is Scindapsus pictus argyraeus, and it has these cute silver splotches. Such an easy grower, hardly ever repot it, hardly ever water it. All I do is I take the vines and I trail them back up, so I'm creating this really, really lush display. I love this plant, and it's just so low maintenance, so wanted to include it. Oh, the next one's gonna be a pain to move. Actually, so many will be painful to move. Yep, this also needs some water. Alrighty, this is one of my... Can you even see me? I feel like it's very dark in here today. Editing Yam will be smarter. This is one of my Monstera deliciosa variegata. Now it is a small form, and I know every time I talk about this plant, there's somebody in the comment section saying it's not a deliciosa, it's a Borsigiana. Borsigiana is actually not a species. Borsigiana is just the name that we gave to a small form deliciosa. At the end of the day, the only recognized species name is deliciosa. There's just different forms. Different forms does not make it a different species. But yes, this will not grow as large as a large form, and I'll show you my Thai afterwards, and the Thai is technically just a large form deliciosa as well. So you'll see a difference in internodal spacing and leaf size. But technically, they're all deliciosa anyway. But yeah, this is I suppose one of the most famous variegated plants out there. I am not super lucky with my variegation on this particular plant, but I have multiplied this plant, I don't know, like 20, 30 times over the years, I reckon, and I've had some really good offshoots, and I have some in the garden that I'll show you later as well. But yeah, this has kind of been my mother plant, and you know what, I don't actually mind her not having the most variegation, because that way she's also not held back by the variegation. She actually grows really nicely instead. She's just relying on natural light, but had really bad thrips that I was a little bit late to get on top of. You can really see these sort of red markings over here. That is, can you see this? That is thrips damage over here. And I used contender spray, and now we seem to be on top of it. But yeah, there were some nicer variegated leaves down here. You win some, you lose some, right? I'll just stay patient. Wow, terrible thrips damage here as well. I'll stay patient, and I'm just hoping that with the next leaf maybe I'll get a little bit more variegation. I think that is the main thrill with variegation for me, is like you never know what you're gonna get. So when you get something good, you're even more excited. Of course you're gonna be a little bit disappointed when you get a leaf that's pretty much fully green and doesn't show too much variegation because, well, you were waiting for it and you were hoping for something different. But yeah, if you know exactly what you would sign up for, I feel like you would take a little thrill away, you know? So I like it this way. It is a beast. Woo! This is my Monstera Thai constellation, and you can see that she climbs with significantly less internodal spacing, so very quick succession of leaves, and she already has much bigger leaves. Now, I've recently done a full video on her as well. Previously, I grew her as a crawler, but she was kind of maxing out the space, she was maxing out her pot, so I wanted to give her more room for more roots, but I wanted to make the room for roots available via the moss pole. In this instance, I actually filled the moss pole with aeroid mix, but I've been saying moss poles for so many years, it's really hard to retrain my brain to not just call any pole moss pole. But yeah, you should be able to see really nice chunky roots starting to fill in over here where the plant has actually started to attach to the pole. So this is what I refer to as like an insurance policy and a vertical extension of the pot. It's literally a pot. It's just a vertically designed pot filled with actually the same media that I filled the pot with. So it is just a vertical extension of the pot. I think people sometimes overcomplicate moss poles and so on. It's not that complicated actually. Yes, it can be a little bit of work, but it can also be super rewarding. I always keep switching back and forth between liking the Thai more than liking the Alba more. I think it really depends on whichever one is thriving more at the moment. Since I've been rewarded with this beautiful leaf recently, I am team Thai constellation. Can you blame me? That's my Thai. Love her. Probably one of the most famous variegated plants out there, right? I would like to go on a little rant before I show you the next plant. 4 or 5 years ago, when I got these plants, I got them both as cuttings from a friend. They were kind of like the it plant, right? There was, if you talk about variegated monsteras, you're like, oh, which one? Do you want the Alba or do you want the Thai? I saw a post yesterday on Facebook. No, and I should never be on Facebook, but it inspires a lot of my rants. Where somebody posted a list of their like inventory, and it was like Hawaiian breeze, skeleton sunset blizzard, white snowstorm blazing. Like, I was like, what the f? They're all Monstera deliciosa, you know? I mean, I don't know, I think maybe people just want to give their plants a nickname, but I think then people get nicknames for plants confused with actual species names. You know what I mean? Like, it's not a described species. On a DNA level, they would probably be the exact same as the Monstera deliciosa. They just present a little bit different. And I get it, you want to give it a name so you can somewhat differentiate it, but I feel like the names are just getting a little bit outrageous, and I can't see past the marketing aspect of all of this. You will see other variegated monsteras of mine later. They are all an offspring of this one over here, but they might look very different because they're grown in different conditions, they show a different variegation and so on. I could give them a fancy name and upload it, and then fool somebody into thinking that this is a species that they don't already have and they need to collect them all because we're all like Pokemons. I'm not saying all of them are crazy and they just want to scam you and upsell you and so on. I'm sure there's also some people that genuinely are interested in this and they genuinely appreciate all of the variety in there. But genuine appreciation should never come with a $40,000 price tag. You know what I mean? Like, as soon as we then start selling them at ridiculous prices, we're clearly no longer genuinely wanting to spread the joy of plants. We just want to cash in. And I feel like these fancy names are just a marketing tool to justify really large price tags by making it sound fancy, rare, special, and all of this. All of my variegated plants were pretty cheap. The Florida Beauty, for example, also 5 years ago would set you back like $1,500. I got it for $35 once it came out of tissue culture. My Thai was a swap, my Albal was a swap, my Mandula was a gift. This one I bought from AJ's, I think for $30 or something like that. So I like variegation, but I don't pay an arm and a leg for it. I reckon the top 5 or 6 most expensive plants that I ever purchased, and some of them I just purchased at really stupid times when the prices were really high, they're all just green. I'm not somebody to get variegation for the sake of the hype. I'm somebody to get variegation because I genuinely think it looks good. Anyway, rant over. Sorry, I said it's going to be just a show and tell, but I can't help myself. Next one, and again, I'm not too sure if we technically classify this as variegation, but my YouTube channel, my rules, so we're going to talk about it. This is Syngonium Frosted Heart, which I believe is just a macrophyllum variety. But what I think is nice about this is kind of like a frosted variegation, right? And with time, these leaves start fading back to being more green, but the new leaves at the top over here have this really nice icy frosted kind of variegation. So it just adds interest. It reminds me of the Florida Ghost a little bit, just in a more compact form with much smaller petioles. So I actually really like this plant. It was also just a cutting. I was never actually planning on adding this plant to my collection, but I was gifted a cutting. And then I was like, you know what, let's make the best out of it. And I actually really, really appreciate this plant because I think it just looks so beautiful. It's compact, it doesn't take up much space, but it has interest. And it keeps changing because the leaves keep fading and new leaves keep popping up over there. So you have like this nice little ombre look. I think it is really, really interesting. So I wanted to include it. Whether or not that's official variegation or not, it's gonna stay here. Oh my God, while I'm talking to you, I'm looking into my garden and I'm spotting way more variegated plants than I thought. Just the fact that a lot of my variegated plants are even in the garden shows you how much I regard their worth. I love where people talk about how much is this plant worth. Well, it's only worth as much as somebody is willing to pay. And unfortunately, there's way too many people with disposable income and willing to spend a lot of money on them. Like, if nobody would be spending $40,000 on a variegated Monstera, nobody would be selling a variegated Monstera for $40,000. You know what I mean? I think as a community, we need to get our shit together and stop this. Anyway, okay, sorry. I said the rant was over. This is the sad little remains of my variegated Alocasia, the Macrorhizia, not the velvet one, just the green one. That's okay, I'm just nursing them back to health. There's actually 4 little shoots in here. It's also super dry. I really need to water today. And I'm just nursing them back to health. I'm keeping them in my IKEA cabinet, and then in spring I think I'm going to put some in Tim's garden, some in my garden, and so on. We'll find out. And over here I've got my Odora Batik. She has seen better days, but she's also seen much worse days. She was actually just a comb maybe half a year ago or so, but we've gone through ups and downs with her. She was in my IKEA cabinet, indoors, in my greenhouse, just in the garden, in the open, back to the IKEA cabinet, now back to being out in the open, then back to the IKEA cabinet. So I think I'm changing things around a little bit too much for her liking, but I'm just trying to really test out what's the best spot for her. Not just from a light perspective, also because I want to keep her kind of round and not just lean to one side. I'll show you an Alocasia that leans to one side later. And I'm also trying out this not so new method anymore. We can see just one root over here. So a little bit of a disappointing result, but a result. It's more than a corm at this stage. I think just one of the most beautiful variegations, right? It's called Overhyped because of that sort of pattern. Now what I also want to show you with variegation, have a look at this for example. Can you see how this leaf is almost going see-through over here? Like it's very, very see-through. It's almost like melting, that's how I like to call it. Look at this one over here, you can really see how the variegated side of the leaf is slowly melting. I believe that it's just making contact with, for example, the glass in the IKEA cabinet. So moisture and variegation is not, we don't like each other. I've noticed that before with variegated plants in my greenhouse where I have a lot of misting. If water sits on the variegated leaf for too long in combination with heat, and it can be really hot in my greenhouse in summer, they just melt away so quickly. So for example, I lost a whole Florida ghost to like within just 2 days or so. Well, I didn't list a root system. I think it's a different one. Actually, I think it's this one. I think it all grew back. Yes. Yes, definitely. But it lost all of its leaves because all of the leaves were super white, and then with the water from the misting sitting on it, and then it wasn't enough airflow. I mean, I have a fan in there, but it wasn't like enough airflow to really dry it off quickly enough. It just turned into brown mush like within 2 days. So a word of caution. But you do want high humidity for your variegation so that the variegation doesn't brown. Like eventually your variegation will brown, you know. I've seen people that use silica apparently to help keeping the variegation pristine. I haven't really tried. Look, I think variegation isn't supposed to look pristine for forever. It's not going to be forever, and I'm okay with that as well. It's a mutation and I accept it for that. And with that comes its limitations. So look, if a variegated part wants to go brown like this over here, which is definitely also a bit thrips induced, like this over here is more, you know, maybe conditions induced, that is okay. That's why I sometimes don't like the sectoral chunks of variegation too much, because that's hard. But like a marbling pattern like on my elbow seems to go brown less quickly, right? If you have a half moon, for example, so one half is white, one half is green, then it can easily be that the white half completely melts away and you only end up having a green half left after a few months or years. Alright, have a look at this one. You can't see the variegation for now, but technically this is a variegated anthurium. Now I don't think variegated anthuriums are like the best thing ever, but I had a pack of seeds, I germinated the seeds, grew them into seedlings, and the only surviving seed happened to show variegation. And I actually had the best time with this plant like 3 years ago. It grew really, really strong, and it then started showing beautiful variegation. Again, over here, I don't necessarily love the end result, because I think the end result can look a little bit sick, especially on velvet plants. But I love the journey. When the leaves first come out, they're really burgundy red, and then the variegation almost is like orange, so it looks like it's actually on fire. And then the dark burgundy parts will eventually turn dark green, and the light green and the fiery red bits will eventually fade to orange and then white. So you have this whole journey, right? You're not just waiting for the leaf to unfurl and then you see how big is it. You're also waiting for the leaf to unfurl and then show the variegation, and every day the plant looks a little bit different. Every day the leaf changes in shape, size and color. I think it is so nice to witness, and I mean that's what I like to, and that's what I enjoy about this hobby. I am in the process of growing, not just owning, so I want to see that transformation, and I'm excited for the next leaf and so on. So look, after that it declined rapidly, and I have had the hardest time bringing it back to health until I put it in this method with the moss and the lacquer reservoir. Not like it's thriving, but it has given me 2 leaves, which is more than it has given me beforehand. So very, very lengthy recovery over here, which will make it so rewarding if I ever get a variegated leaf out of this again. Maybe while we're on variegated anthuriums, variegation can just be a random mutation when growing things from seed. So recently I pollinated my puppy hybrid, and of course I'm going to do a full video. Last week I separated out some seedlings. This is what a normal seedling looks like, and I'm gonna try and hide my face so the camera focuses on it. This is what a normal seedling looks like, and sorry, that clip is just to hang it in the IKEA cabinet. But I also separated out a few seedlings that look like this. Now, you can't bloody tell me that this is not variegation. Now, whether or not this is maybe just, it could be a virus even, could be mosaic virus. Actually, you know, if you ask anybody online, is this variegation, 90% of the times people are so jealous that they'll tell you should burn it. Anyway. Sorry, maybe they're not jealous, maybe they're genuinely concerned for you. But yeah, a lot of people always say, it's virus, it's virus, it's virus. I have a few plants in my collection that people have urged me to throw away 4 years ago because it's a virus that's going to spread to my entire collection and it's just going to make them all die. Well, these plants are obviously still with me. If you tell me to do something, you can be pretty certain I'll do the opposite. So of course I still have them, and of course absolutely nothing is wrong with them. But it's actually quite, I'll show you the plant later, it's in the greenhouse. It kind of grew out of it. But yeah, I'll show you that. Anyway, that's an interesting journey, right? Again, I didn't mean to have variegated plants over here. It's just a random mutation that the seed was showing. And it could easily grow out of it because the variegation is obviously not healthy for the plant. The variegation is holding back the plants. Plants have an innate desire to survive, so it maintaining the variegation is not necessarily going to help it survive. So sometimes plants can grow out of this as well and just eventually become green because they want to live. They don't want to look good for our stupid brain, you know what I mean? Us humans made up that variegation is beautiful. In nature, it's almost like a warning sign, you know what I mean? We're like, this is not healthy. But over here, we are like, wow, desirable, rare, take my money. Now, this is beautiful variegation. Oh, look at that. Let me bring you a bit closer. This is a jade pothos, and I'm doing a full video on this as well. I got it, I think, with this one leaf down here. All of this grew before I put it on a moss pile. Then you can distinctly see how it started looking for something. I was like, oh no, I should have really given this a moss pile. And then they ended up giving it a moss pile, and it's now shingling up its way. How stunning is this variegation? So over here it's almost fully white already, as you can see over here in the newly emergent leaves. This one, you can't even see it yet. You cannot see. I mean, it could be that there's no variegation, but I feel like it would be a big jump from all of this to absolutely nothing. Well, I hope that's not the case. I think it will just take its sweet time to come in, right? Again, it should be green on green. Over here it's a little bit more. It's still kind of green on green, then it really starts going yellow, and then all the way to eventually fading to all white. So again, a great journey, right? I love a good journey. Wow, I had too much coffee this morning already. But I love all of this. I love when it has the half-half. I love it has when it, all of this variegation with the little splotch of green. I love when it's marbled like this as well. Like, how gorgeous is this marbled leaf over here? So sexy. But most importantly, I love that I have all of this within just one pole. Like, look at the variety. You truly never know what you're gonna get. And look, if this leaf is fully green, then I'm gonna be a little bit upset, but that's okay because it's already unfurling a new one here and already a next one coming here. Thriving, loving life. And it takes up so little space. It's the perfect plant for my IKEA cabinet. I love this plant and I'm so happy that I bought it. And there's going to be a plant spotlight coming for this plant. I just don't know when. I think I only got this in maybe October last year. So we've got a while to go until the plant spotlight. It's not a bad thing. The more the plant can grow, the more information I can share with you. So stay tuned for this one. On that note, make sure you subscribe to my channel and turn on the bell notification so you get informed when I upload more videos like this one. And while you're at it, please also give the video a like. Thank you. I think you need to stay here. You are too pretty to turn away. Another one where the yellow variegation actually looks really nice. I think sometimes yellow is like a warning sign in the plant community, right? Like leaves go yellow because of overwatering, underwatering, pests. You know, and so on. So yellow is usually not a good thing. But we are changing the game one yellow leaf at a time. The star of the show, my Alocasia frydek. A going to keep it short because I have 2 specific videos on this plant and this growing method. It is in a glass vase with leca and moss, which is extremely heavy. I've just recently done a full update on it, but has got to be one of the most beautifully variegated plants. Again, we get fully variegated, we get splotchy, we get half-half, we get all of this. Like, look at this leaf. Look at this leaf. I would like to do one more rant. And I can't promise it's going to be the last one, but I would like to talk about it now. Thank you. As you can tell, I'm really passionate about people throwing names out there. When I uploaded a video about this recently, by the way, this all came from the exact same teeny tiny tissue culture, baby. So eventually that plant just had corms and so on. I had multiple comments saying, oh my god, you have Friedeck aurea and Friedeck albo in the same pot. How stunning. Because some of the variegation was presenting more white, some of the variegation was presenting more yellow. But if you look at the plant now, more and more of these leaves have become albo, right? You know why? Because ultimately there was never an albo and an aurea variegated Friedeck in here. It's the same plant, just variegation changes over time. You saw it on that moss pole with the scindapsus. There's the albo, there's the aurea, then there's the half moon, there's the marble. It's the same bloody plant. I mean, if it makes you happy to give it 700 different names and all of that, that's fine. I just come from a perspective where I feel for people that are new to this hobby and they might see a plant like that online and they're like, you know what, I really like this plant. I would love to have one of these plants as well. And they then read that comment saying, oh, there's an aurea and an albo in there. And they then go out and think that they need to buy 2 different plants. It's just the same plant, just the leaves have different ages, you know. One has already faded to be a little bit lighter and the other one just unfurled and is still a little bit more yellow. Now you're gonna spend money twice to end up with the exact same plant. I mean, not a bad thing. You can double plant them and just have twice the lushness. But somebody essentially just got scammed into thinking that the same plant has 2 different names and thus are 2 different plants. And I don't like people being scammed, and I especially don't like people being scammed in my comment section by people that leave a throwaway comment. Okay, rant over, thank you. I try and be really careful not making these sort of claims myself. I'm very vocal on when I don't know something, and I just describe to you my experience as a grower. And in my experience as a grower, growing this plant for 1.5 years, I know what it started off like. I know it's all from the exact same DNA, and I know that ultimately these leaves unfurl looking a little bit more yellow and then eventually turn white. I don't know if there is a true aurea form out there, but I can certainly tell you that in this particular pot there aren't any different forms of Friedeck in there. It's one freaking plant. It's an identical clone of itself. There's 3 plants in there, but they're all identical clones. Okay, well, the rant wasn't over when I said it was over, was it? Alrighty, next one. And probably, out of all the variegated plants, probably the one where I'm just like, okay, I really didn't need to buy this one. But I actually bought this one for content purposes. You know, you also need to keep in mind I'm a content creator, that's my job, I need to create content, so I need plants. And I thought it would be nice to add something interesting. This is a variegated Philodendron melanochrysum. Now I have to come real close. Over here you can really see some leaves have nice variegation, like this new one unfurling over here is going to look quite nice as well. Over here this has nice variegation, but a lot of it has already reverted as well. There's an element of being sun stressed in there as well. I just recently moved her out of the IKEA cabinet actually. So I think the combination of variegation and sun stress makes it look a little bit unhealthy. But at the same time, I also think it kind of makes it look like a nice autumn forest. I don't know. It is interesting. I already have a normal Milano, and of course I would always prefer the normal, beautiful, dark Milano over this, because with the variegation you also end up getting leaves like this, for example, that are just, like you can really see, the more variegated, the more deformed. So sometimes variegation comes at the expense of shape, because the variegation is holding back the plant a little bit and so on. But it was a little experiment. I don't have any variegated velvet philodendron. Actually, apart from those alocasia seeds that I showed you, I don't have any variegated velvets. And I don't think variegated and velvet is a great combination. I think velvet is already interesting enough. You don't need to have variegation with it. But, you know, growing plants is also my job. So I want to make new experiences and so on. And I've definitely learned a lot with this plant from a process perspective. I have cut up this plant probably over 20 times in a year and a half. I've had so many propagations of this already because very early on my goal was always to propagate it. I never wanted to grow this to maturity. I always wanted to grow this really lush. So over here I probably have about 20 growth points, 20 active growth points on here at the moment. I can't really count. It's quite messy. But I also just chopped off a bunch of them. But obviously they will reshoot, so I'll get more growth points back. Overall, I kind of like it. I think it's interesting, but out of all the variegated plants I've shown you so far, this is probably the ugliest one, right? I mean, I gotta admit that. You can stay, you're not that ugly. You're a bit of a filler. Look, this looks nice. These two, the fried egg and the Milano, are the only two that actually came from my office. Sorry, I said we're gonna go through all of the rooms, but I have now built this wall of variegation behind me that I don't really want to squeeze you and the light through, so I brought the plants closer to you, and I think it was really worth it for those two plants. Let me really quickly just go upstairs and have a look, and if there's any, I'll bring them down. This, remember the Florida Beauty from the beginning? I actually bought this at a very similar time as the Florida Beauty, also as a tissue culture plant, and quite obviously this has not progressed from being that teeny tiny tissue culture plant. Because I had so little success with this, I ended up buying the second Florida Ghost that was already a little more established. But yeah, I'm glad I bought that second one because obviously that's been thriving, whereas this one is still stuck as this tiny tissue culture plant. But you can again really see how the variegation is light induced. I recently put it up in my rescue section where I just set up a whole lot of grow lights for plants to overwinter, and since I gave it the grow light, it gave me this fully white leaf. So the high light up there is definitely having an impact on the plant. But holy moly, this has been over 3 years, I think. I mean, come on. Glad I bought the other one, right? Now, obviously they all come from my rescue section up there, so you're not going to see the most beautiful specimen. They will not make it to the wall behind us. This one is Autumn Queen. I think in America it's also referred to as Orange Marmalade. Again, you can't see much variegation because these leaves are quite old. The new one coming out looks okay. Now, I have not put enough effort into this plant. That's why this year I actually decided I'm going to put it up in my rescue section for overwintering so it doesn't just absolutely shit itself again, so that I don't need to start from scratch again next year. Because I think it's time for me to put a little bit more effort into this. I've had this for over a year already and pretty much nothing has happened. It was a cutting that was gifted to me by Tim from Grow Vertical, and at the same time he gifted me a titanium, verrucosum titanium cutting, for example, and verrucosum is my all-time favorite plant. So that plant I took good care of, and I'm really ambitious with it, and I'm always making sure I give it good conditions and I never let it dry out. This one I just let sit in the corner somewhere in my greenhouse where it didn't end up getting enough light, too much moisture, just no attention, and it shows, right? So as much as we say like plants thrive on neglect, they only thrive on neglect if you put them in an environment that enables them to thrive on neglect. If you put them in a dark room with no light, no heat, no nothing, they're not gonna thrive, right? The thrive on neglect part really implies that at least you're getting good enough conditions. Now, I definitely neglected this plant, but it didn't thrive, and that is because I didn't give it enough conditions. This is not known to be a finicky plant, and I'm not saying it is a finicky plant. I'm just saying I haven't even tried with this plant yet. But I think it is time to change that. So I think in the upcoming growing season, spring onwards, I would like to try a little bit harder with this plant because it can look so stunning. And it has very different colors, right? It is very orangey, red and so on. So it's really fiery variegation. Oh my God, that reminds me, I have a ring of fire out there. I have so many variegated. Not too sure if you count this as variegation, but it is Aglaonema pictum tricolor. It has tricolored leaf. Like it has these it had this light green, dark green, and this mid green. So really nice and camouflagey. Just looks a little bit different, so I thought I'd include it anyway, but it's probably not the traditional variegation that we all think of when we think of variegation. It's also in the rescue section because it's basically just a tree. I will do something about it, but now is not the time. Alright, that concludes the inside, so let's head outside. Look at this stunning variegation. Mwah. Look at you. You are pristine white on orange variegated, huh? Yes, this very rare, very special. You could never, just so you know. Alrighty, let's address the obvious first. I am in a ski jacket because it's actually really cold. We're in winter over here. Yes, it's not an alpine snowy winter kind of winter in Sydney. I think last night it was 12 degrees, which is not going to be the coldest. The coldest is probably going to be like 4, 5, 6 degrees sometime at night. So obviously we're not going to get frost, right? Which is a positive, but that doesn't mean that this is nice and warm. I should really close the door. In the grand scheme of things, it's obviously not freezing cold. I just wish we had better insulation indoors, so sometimes it is colder inside than it is outside in Australia because they don't know how to build houses. Anyway, it is not warm enough for tropical aeroids to thrive, right? I would usually say avoid anything under 16 degrees. I have way too many plants to take them inside, so out here are the plants that I feel like are going to have an okay time growing outdoors. And for some of them, it's already their second year. So they've already proven to me last year that, you know what, they can survive. And I'm just hoping for the best yet again. I ultimately don't have any other option. And you know what, it's going to be just fine. But this one is Epipremnum pinnardum variegata. There's a second shoot down here, also showing some nice leaves. These are obviously already looking a little bit smaller now that we are in winter. It had actually the slowest comeback, but then suddenly started growing one leaf after the other. But as soon as it started getting colder, that also stopped again. So I just hope that it's not going to decline much over the course of winter, and that next year I might have a better recovery story. I really enjoy these big leaves down here, for example. But yeah, it hasn't had the best year last year. But I think it's still a pretty impressive plant, considering that it didn't have a good time for over 12 months now. Right? I mean, if this is her looking terrible, wait until she looks beautiful again. She looked absolutely stunning when I grew her inside, but she's an absolute space hoarder. I just don't have enough room these days because I have so many plants, and ultimately it is a plant that's going to at least be able to survive out here, so it's going to stay. You can't see all too much over here because the variegation has faded a lot, but this one is emerald green pothos. Yeah, you really can't see this. Maybe you can see it in this tiny leaf on the side there, this one. It is like dark green, light green variegated, but it fades over time a lot. Maybe this leaf over here, you can still see it a little bit. Yeah. These leaves are all a bit older. I just chopped off a whole lot of growth points over here to give it a little bit more time, and I also moved it from the greenhouse out here because it wasn't getting enough light in the greenhouse. So hopefully it's just going to survive winter, and then hopefully in spring with the increased light exposure, this variegation is going to show better. I don't think the light dictates how much variegation there'll be, but the light will impact the way the variegation presents. The lime green is going to be more lime green. The dark green is going to be more dark green. You know, whites are going to be more pristine white if you give your plant enough light, and so on. Also can change over time and so on, right? Like with the Jose Bueno, for example, it faded to all look the same level of green, whereas with the Friedeck, for example, the variegation faded to be even lighter than it was before. Anyway, technically a variegated plant, but you can't really see it. It's not a bad thing at times. I don't mind green plants either. All right, this is, remember the Albo that I showed you early on, this is technically the bottom part of that. So when I did a chop and extend, I took the top part, re-extended it, put it outside. I took the bottom part, I re-extended it, and I put it outside. This has actually outperformed the original mother plant. It does have nicer variegation down here as well, but it also has sized up much quicker than the actual top cutting, so a bit of a surprise. So quite clearly it's a result of the better conditions out here. Not right now, but when I chopped it, it was still the middle of the growing season, and now it's pushing out this beautiful new leaf despite it being quite cold. But Monstera deliciosas have an easy time out here on the street. And yes, I'm going to sneak a little look into. Looks like there's a bit of variegation coming actually. Not much, but better than nothing. I think especially out here because it's exposed to harsh conditions, harsh sun. You can see some of this variegation, like here, going crispy much quicker than indoors, right? So I think having a nice marbled variegation on this one will actually be preferred for everybody involved. Next one. This is my Syngonium mojito. Again, a very similar phenomenon. When the leaves are newish, they have this beautiful pattern with variegation. Actually, the newer they are and the more light they get exposed to, the more distinct the variegation will show. You can have a look. Over here we've got a few newer shoots. You can very much distinctly see the variegation over here. Whereas if we dig a little bit deeper into the pot, these older leaves have all faded to look pretty much just full green. It's not like they were full green the whole time, it's just fading over time. But overall that gives you this beautiful interest, right? Not every leaf looks the same. You get this ombre design again, which I really like. And this is a super lush pot. There's probably 10, 15, 20 plants in here. So I never really wanted to grow this to maturity. I always wanted to grow this as lush as possible as a round display, just like that. So it's nice and compact, not too tall, so it fits under my umbrella. What is this? Look at the amount of spider mites on here. Bye. That's sad because one leaf was already absolutely destroyed by the wind recently, but look at this. Yuck. It's weird, I've never seen that many spider mites outside. How did you survive the rain? I mean, I'm sure every other leaf also has lots and lots of them then. No, not really. How was it just that one leaf that was like totally infested? Anyway, moving on. Not the best time of the year to show you the... Hello, baby. Sorry, I need to move this. Am I allowed to move this? Okay, why don't I just move the plant, not the plant here, so you can survive down there. Oh my god, look at the roots. My blood banana. Very different type of variegation. This one has red variegation. Now the red is much more dominant when the leaf first unfurls. It is super nice in red, and then over time it fades. So you can see these older leaves hardly show any variegation. And yeah, so be it. There is a new leaf unfurling despite it being really cold, and bananas don't usually like it all too cold, but I'll take it. It had, oh, this one has spider mites too. It had a phenomenal growing season this year. Oh, actually you can see it here. Look at this new leaf that has much more variegation, right? I also think with maturity the plant shows less variegation from my experience and also what I have observed at the Botanic Gardens. Yeah, it had a phenomenal growing season last year outside. It lived outside year round as well, after having a terrible repotting incident in the year before. So I'm really glad that she's back to thriving, and she is one of my favorite plants, and I think it's just really interesting to have a very different type of variegation and something that presents red instead of white or yellow that we normally see. Bradley, do you want to go back inside? Is it too cold for you? Brad loves being out here. He just had a little nibble on his cat grass and was waiting for me to open the door for him again. So you know it's actually cold when even Brad doesn't want to spend time out here. If you don't trust... Oh my god, what's happening here? Ignore this little box down here for now, please. We're talking about it tomorrow, I think. Well, tomorrow in my timeline. I'm not too sure where this sits in your timeline. Actually, I think by the time you see this video, I might have already talked about it. Anyway, this box facilitates electricity, so I do have a fan on, but I do not heat this greenhouse. So it is almost as cold. It's supposed a little bit warmer during the day when the sun hits, and I keep the windows closed, but it's not really insulated enough to keep the heat in there. My main advantage of the greenhouse in winter is that I can control the moisture. It rains a lot in Sydney, especially in winter, and in winter it's not that warm, so water isn't evaporating. So and cold and wet is not the greatest of all combinations, so at least I can avoid the cold and wet combination in here a little bit more, so I should have better success. Anyway, this is my ring of fire. I like her. She has beautiful variegation. Also, if you sun stress her a little bit, they can almost come out red, then eventually fade to, should really show you this way, right? Then eventually fades to more orange, and you can see the old ones, you can hardly see the variegation anymore. So it's a common thing that the variegation seems to fade a little bit over time with a lot of these plants. But when it first comes out, you can see how the variegated part is going to be really red. So I think that's where it got the fire part from. Oh, this is heavy. Just while we're here, also have a look at the beautiful roots in the back. This is going to be this plant's first season out here, so I am not sure yet if it's going to cope with it, but that's my job as a grower to find out, right? Over here I've got my Syngonium. Oh, very close. Over here I've got my Syngonium. I'm attempting to do the exact same thing as I did with the Mojito. I cut it into lots of single node cuttings, planted them up, and you can see all of these little shoots coming out now. Some already have new leaves. So again, not aiming for maturity. I used to let it climb, didn't necessarily like it. So I'm just going to aim for a really lush pot. So I'm not aiming for maturity. So I'm also thinking, you know what, maybe I don't need to give it the best conditions. It survived in the greenhouse last year, so I'm confident it can survive. All right, this is a good example of my rant that I gave you earlier, where this one's called Alocasia Indonesian marble, but over here the variegation, look how deformed these leaves are. The variegation over here is actually not very desirable. It makes the leaf ugly and deformed, and the variegation itself, like you can really see where the variegation is, the leaf doesn't exist. So I can see how this could easily be like a virus that maybe causes the variegation. Overall, all I know is that it just looks terrible. So what I've done is I chopped it in between every single node, and you can see all of these, what's on here? You can see all of these new shoots. So every node is now reshooting. Because obviously growing it to maturity did not serve me well. It started looking worse. Actually, I think the bottom part over here, where the leaves are still a little more juvenile, it looks better, and the variegation is better as well. So yeah, growing it to maturity did not serve me well, so I'm just going to aim for a lush juvenile pole instead. And you know what, I'm almost hoping that the variegation doesn't show too much, because the variegation makes this plant ugly. So that's one of these plants. It came at a good price, and to be honest, I bought it as a cutting, and on the mother plant the variegation looked really healthy. So I don't know if I just got unlucky, or if it's maybe something with my growing conditions and so on as well, but your growing conditions shouldn't make a plant look like this. You know, if you have insufficient growing conditions, then the plant should maybe just not grow at all, not just deform itself. There's definitely something wrong with this DNA, right? Like, but it's one of these things where people sell it to you as mint or blizzard or whatever, you know, where it's just like, okay, just because it was given a fancy name doesn't mean it's a plant worth growing. Oh. But obviously each to their own. This is a cutting. This is a propagation of my original Deliciosa as well, and you can see this is showing much nicer variegation. I've actually even had some half moon ones, but I gave them away. I have no desire to have a half moon, because I just feel like one half is going to decline faster than the other, so it's not really going to look that nice. I like a good marbled with a little bit of sectoral variegation. So I really like this, and I think it looks so nice small as well. So it is one of the most beautiful plants. It's a classic, so I need to have 3 of them. Jokes aside, I mean, I often grow multiple plants of the same kind. For example, I have 3 variegated, just at 3 different stages of maturity. With variegation, there's an extra element added. You can have different plants at various levels of maturity, but then they also might present different amounts of variegation. Some might be more sectoral, some might be more marbled. Overall, there's a little bit more interest, because you can't just play with different sizes, you're also playing with different levels of variegation and so on. So I don't mind having multiple ones because it's a really cost-effective way of adding more plants to your collection. I propagated them myself, it didn't cost me anything, but I think they still add something nice to it, right? Like, this is a nice cute plant for my greenhouse. Why wouldn't I want this plant here? Oh, before I talk about this one, I can't get it out now, but there is my Stuttgart. I induced dormancy, and let me just put on screen what she looks like in spring, summer and so on. So one of the most stunning variegated plants, but the variegation also fades really quickly and gets really crispy really quickly. So I think this year I really need to try, or like in spring, I really need to try and give her a better setup so that she doesn't dry out as quickly, so that the white doesn't go as crispy. But one of the most stunning variegated plants, and like a cheap version of the variegated banana, the white variegated one. Anyway, let's talk about this one. This just looks like a normal Alocasia cuprea. It is because it is a normal Alocasia cuprea, but this was actually a purchase I made many moons ago before I had judgment, and this was sold to me as a variegated cuprea with low variegation. So it was fairly affordable because it was pretty much reverted, but I was like, maybe it can come back and so on. Now, this is definitely a plant. I have one leaf that shows a little bit of variegation. Can you see this yellow bit down here? And see where this bit over here is completely deformed? That's also because it shows variegation. Maybe more visible from the back. I don't know. Maybe this one, you can really see it over here a little bit better, how it's like splotchy, no, this is not spider mite damage. Over here it faded a lot on the front of the leaf, but you can see this side had a little bit of variegation. Or is it variegation? Is it mutation? Is it mosaic virus? That is, I think, a common argument online where people say that, hey, this is actually mosaic virus, not variegation, and mosaic virus could spread and then basically kill your whole collection. I talked about this one on my Instagram 2-3 years ago, or longer ago. Actually, I think I had this for 4 years, maybe 4.5 years or so. I had this for a long time. And I was urged to go ahead and burn this plant, get it really far away from the rest of my collection, because the mosaic virus is going to take over and destroy my whole collection. 4.5 years later, my collection is bigger than ever, and this plant has been with me the whole way. It has made it through all of my moves. And quite clearly by now, the plant has also grown out of the variegation. These old leaves that are showing you are really old. They're not necessarily from, at least even within the last year. All of the leaves you can really see are just normal. So maybe it was a virus, but I think the plant has kind of overcome it by itself. Maybe it was a mutation and the plant has also overcome it by itself. At the end of the day, it didn't kill my whole collection. Now, I'm not saying if you're worried about a virus on the plant to just mingle the plant amongst everything else. Obviously, people had good intentions and they warned me because they didn't want me to lose my whole collection. But I'm not too sure where people come from when they make these recommendations. Do they make these recommendations based on their own experiences, or do they make recommendations based on what other people have warned them of? And then these people warned them of that because they were warned, and they were warned, and they were warned. Is everybody just repeating what somebody else once told them, or people actually speaking from experience and from knowledge and so on? I don't know. That's all I'm trying to tell you. I'm not saying that anybody's lying. But people love fear-mongering, right? Like, I mean, that is nothing specific to the plant community. I think that is in every community. People love scaring people and so on. So I'm always really skeptical when I hear arguments online about this is mosaic virus, this is this is that, this is so on. I like to let the plant decide, not some stranger on Facebook. But yeah, anyway, word of caution. It's possible that your variegation is virus and spreads to everything, But I personally haven't experienced that, and I don't know of a single person that has actually experienced that. I feel like everybody's just read about it, you know what I mean? But who started it? Who started this rumor? Is it a rumor? Is it true? I don't know. I've been growing for a reasonable amount of time. I know a lot of other people that grow plants. I know people that even have plant shops, and I've never heard of this actually happen. I know that people had their whole collection wiped out by like fungal, for example, or by like really bad pests that they didn't manage to get on top of. But I never heard of anybody buying a variegated plant, it turns out it was mosaic virus and your whole collection is dying. If that has happened to anybody, or you know somebody that has happened to, please let me know in the comments. But if you just read about it in a comment section on Facebook under your cousin's post where your friend's cousin's second uncle knows somebody that they used to go to high school with who read this somewhere on Reddit, then I'm not interested. Sorry, I'm a bit moody today. Do I have anything here? That horrible throw it out cupria actually also ended up in my garden. I put a little cutting here, or like a little comb, and it has split itself. It has great colorations. Look at this coppery, sheeny, red, beautiful. Also shows no signs of deformation, no signs of variegation, but also no signs of virus. So I'm really happy that I kept this plant. Oh, hang on, there's a variegated monstera here. These are reverted variegated monsteras, and you can see they're just, sorry I don't have a gimbal, so I'm going to be a bit shaky. But you can see they have the teeny tiniest variegation, then it disappears again. Yeah, I don't think it's coming back. Over here as well. But that's okay. As you can see quite clearly, the plant actually wants to be green. So we can manage the variegation only by chopping the plant and hoping that the re-chops have lots of green and then selecting for that. What do I have here? Again, sorry, I don't have a gimbal, so I'm going to be fast. Here's some other variegated syngoniums, the Three Kings, Confetti, a Trio Star. I suppose that's also kind of technically variegated, but I don't think this is the type of plant that we are talking about. And then this one, the thing is, like, somebody reminded me in the comment section the other day about this plant's name, but now I'm struggling to remember the comment, so I'm still no smarter. But yeah, it looks nice. It's a nice pop of color, I think. Okay, we need to go back inside desperately. Alrighty, we're back inside. I rearranged a little bit so we can take a little group photo. Come on, smile everybody! Oh my god, I think about, do you guys know Ellie and Nala, the little golden retrievers, the one that do the selfie with the smile. Oh, I love them. Anyway. My variegated tiger is missing from the photo, but it's okay. Now, you know what? Actually, I had no idea I had that many variegated plants. If I think about it actively, I don't think variegated plants is really like the one thing that tickles my fancy. As I mentioned, I definitely love my velvets. I suppose the two rooms that I spent the most time in, which is my bedroom, only has velvet anthuriums, and my office only has velvet philodendrons. So I feel like those are the plants that I surround myself the most with. Those are the plants that I feel like I'm known for. Those are the plants that I appreciate the most, and none of them is really variegated, but quite clearly over the years I have accumulated a lot more variegated plants than I anticipated, which is not a bad thing. I do think I have good taste in variegation. I think the kind of plants that I have sought out are nicely variegated. The most expensive one out of all of them was actually the variegated Milano, and as I mentioned, it's actually my least favorite of them. So I think my taste over here, opposed to all other aspects of my life, I seem to have really cheap taste when it comes to variegation, which is a great thing. Lucky me, I don't even like the really expensive ones in the first place. I think, to me, variegation is stunning when it's nicely grown, when the plant looks healthy. So I prefer a marbled variegation over super chunky variegation. I enjoy the journey of variegation. I enjoy when a plant changes over time, or the variegation of a plant changes over time. That to me just adds another element of interest to the plant. I'm certainly not interested in just the price tag of that particular plant. Just because a plant is rare, desirable, expensive does not mean that I want to have it. Actually, it really means that I don't want to have it. I don't want that plant anywhere to be seen in my collection. I feel like it would just be a source of anxiety rather than a source of joy. I'd rather go for inexpensive plants like a Mandula pothos, like a Florida Beauty. They're so inexpensive coming out of tissue culture these days. Even Tycons. I saw a Ty constellation at Woolies for $50 the other day and it had beautiful variegation, right? So these days, a lot of these plants that I like to grow have become really inexpensive, and I only got them because they're inexpensive, not the other way around. Now, I was pretty vocal in this video, and I apologize if that kind of offended anybody in any sort of sense, but look, these are my opinions, and at the end of the day I also want to share my opinions with people, and hopefully my opinions can resonate with people, specifically people that are really new to the plant hobby. They're still trying to figure out the basics. We're still making learnings on watering, moss piles, conditions, growing, and so on. We don't need to make these lessons even more complicated by now trying to make all of these lessons with a variegated plant that is naturally held back and cost you an arm and a leg, so you have way more to lose, right? So I hope that me being opinionated is kind of counteracting the general hype that you often see online when you know, variegated plants get released or new fancy variants are released and so on. Hopefully I can kind of just counteract that, but at the end of the day, of course, form your own opinion. If you like a plant and that plant costs $10,000 and you're willing to spend $10,000 on that plant, be my guest. I personally wouldn't. This is my YouTube channel, so I'm gonna give you my opinion on things. Ultimately, your money, your hobby, do whatever makes you happy. And if having really rare, expensive, desirable plants makes you happy, then I'm really happy for you to have found something within the plant community that made you happy. That's a win for everybody, including the seller who just made a fortune. Can't help myself, can I? I actually think living in Australia and having access to a limited gene pool really helped me over here, because I think if I would have gotten into a lot of variegated plants really early on in my journey, it could have easily ruined this hobby for me, because I think you might encounter less success because of the variegation, and failure comes at a much higher cost. In Australia, because we can't import plants, most of the plants that we eventually get released come out of tissue culture. So demand must have already been really high for them to start tissue culturing a plant in the first place. So it's usually a little bit delayed, right? Like a few years post the trend, we finally get the plants at an affordable price. But I think that really saved me, because I really just started appreciating the few plants we already have in the country, and a lot of them were not variegated, a lot of them were just green versions. And I made it my mission to take plants that are readily available at an inexpensive cost and grow them as large and as good as possible. So I really aimed at perfecting my craft as a grower, rather than being a collector that needs to have the fanciest, rarest, most expensive plants to show off, right? So I think it kind of worked in my favor to have that limited gene pool, because I understand that if you have access to so many plants and so many variegated plants, it's very easy to impulse buy. When I was in Miami, there were so many beautiful variegated plants. By no means am I saying that these plants are not beautiful. They're just not necessarily what I want in my house and what I want my journey to be all about. But yes, they're certainly beautiful, certainly expensive, and I could see how, you know, in the heat of the moment when you're just like, I feel a little down, I want to reward myself, that you just gravitate towards, oh, let's just get this variegated plant because it makes me happy in the moment. So I'm really glad that I didn't even have this as an option, because I think I would have probably done that too many times. Anyway, I said I wanted to quickly wrap it up, and I'm still ranting, but I think you know me for my rants. I think you guys appreciate me for my passion, and I appreciate the passion that I have for this hobby. If I would feel so blasé about everything, and I feel like sometimes the internet is all about being blasé, don't you have an opinion? You better make your opinion as generic as possible. I don't like that. I like that there's actually something that I care about. If I wouldn't care about it, I wouldn't be willing to put that much time and effort into growing these plants, filming these plants, and then sharing it with you. So, you know, that passion is obviously what makes me do all of this, but this passion also sometimes turns into a rant that you have to sit through. Well, you don't have to. You could have clicked off by now. But if you haven't, I really appreciate it. In the comment section down below, let's talk about variegation. What is your favorite variegated plant in my collection? What's your favorite variegated plant in your collection? Is there a variegated plant on your wish list that is just unreasonably expensive for now, but as soon as the prices drop, you're gonna get it? Let me know. Make sure you also like, subscribe, and click the bell icon so you get a notification every time I upload, and hopefully I'll see you in my next video. Bye!